Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr and also with Kevin Noon here for a live show. First, Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I'm in the middle because I'm the most important, just like Alice on the Brady Bunch. So that's a pretty big thrill for me. How are you?
I'm doing fine, but that's not important right now. Kevin, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm having lunch delivered here in a minute from my wife. So if I disappear for half a second, just know that I am finishing off a spicy chicken sandwich as quickly as possible because Tony and I get to cover some high school football tonight. So I better get some food in my stomach so I'm not having to stand in line for concessions.
Yeah, you never know what to expect when you get to a concession stand. Is it going to be like, I know, like I get there and I kind of expect like Major League Baseball prices, and it's like, oh, it's only $1.50 for a water. How pleasant. Here's a $5, keep it. And now we're just like, here's a $5, keep the water coming, because usually it's like 87 degrees out in the 2 weeks that we go see high school football when college football isn't here. So yeah, I'm looking forward to going and seeing Glenville at Olentangy Liberty, not to give away where we'll be because we don't want throngs of people there to see us. We're working. This is a working situation. Please do not mob us. Mob Kevin, that's fine. He loves that stuff, but I will be working. Kevin's just there to socialize. I'm going to be getting stuff done. So
I'm going to be there calling plays for Ted Sr.
Throw it deep. Just throw it deep. That's all. That's all everybody wants. So yes, here we are on a Friday. I have nothing planned. I saw the title of the show is like stuff we've learned from camp. I thought, hey, that's some good stuff to talk about. Usually, though, this is as viewer driven as we can make it, because that makes it much easier on us, all of us, and that's the way we like it. So as the questions come in, Kevin will pop them up there and we will address them. Let's start with this one, Kevin. I will read it, or Tom, you can read it.
All right, I'm in the middle, so I guess I'll read it. Sure, that makes sense. From Colin Burns, this isn't a panic question, so please don't take it that way. But is it just me, or has it been relatively quiet on the JSN front this fall camp? Colin, first of all, stop panicking. Stop. I can hear the panic in your tone. Stop. It's going to be okay. And I mean, Tony, correct me if I'm wrong here. And I mean, how many times have I said that? And I've never been wrong. But with a player like that, what is the news? The news is, he got hurt. Like, it doesn't feel like there's going to be any, Jackson Smith-Njigba is a good receiver who's going to catch a lot of passes this year. That's not really news. That's kind of dog bites man. So with a player like that, who is not a first-time starter, a player like that who's fairly proven, it feels like no news is good news on that front.
Yeah, even speaking for myself as a guy who writes about these players, you're writing more about the new guys. At least that's how I do. I like to write about the new guys, get everybody caught up to speed on everybody else. Jackson Smith-Njigba, not that he's old news, but there's just not as much to write about in that everybody knows who he is. Everybody knows what to expect. And so I can see why Colin would be panicking as crazily as he is right now, because there are other people to bring into into your world, basically, and to talk about and to write about new guys. And Jackson Smith-Njigba, I found this. I don't even know if I've really truly written a Jackson Smith-Njigba story in camp. I don't think I have. I actually used some of his quotes for a story today, talking about the room as a whole. And even I wrote my safety preview piece, and I've got all these bullet points. I really never said anything about Ronnie Hickman, who's the starting free safety. So I had to add another category, just to be like, I have to talk about him because he's a starter, where it's, these guys are assumed, they are known quantities. So you just don't really talk about them much. And Kevin, I don't know, is Jackson Smith-Njigba, is he being overlooked right now? Everybody knows about him, so I don't think you have to write about him as much locally. Nationally, they will, but locally here, it's like, it's not a big story. It's like, people in Paris don't go to the Eiffel Tower.
Right, exactly. I don't go to Thurman Cafe unless somebody's in from out of town to sit there and wait 2.5 hours for a gigantic burger that's guaranteed that I'm going to be up all night with indigestion. but I still love you, Thurman. So if you'd like to sponsor Buckeye Weekly, hit us up. Yeah, I don't think that there's a huge necessity for a ton of JSN news in terms of who is this guy. I mean, we know who he is. What is his impact on the offense? Large. I mean, we know these things. So just because we're not writing about something, it's at Buckeye Huddle, we want to sit there and introduce you to the guys that you may not know as much about. I would rather read a story about Emeka Egbuka. I mean, even though we do kind of know a little bit about him, we don't know a ton about him. Tell me about Jaden Ballard at this point. So, I mean, there are only so many stories that can be written. I know that there are a lot of fine outlets out there in Buckeye Nation space, none finer than ours, but, you need to, there are limitations as to what can get written at that point. So don't panic. I understand where you're coming from. Sometimes if you don't hear about something, is there some sort of cabal going on to try and keep it on the DL or whatever? No, everything's fine. JSN's going to be fine, I can assure you.
Yeah. Also, the scrum around him can be so large at times that it's just easier to talk to other players. So it's just the ease of access is another thing. But a great comment, Tom. I would like for you to read this comment specifically and in your Australian accent.
All right, from obviously Tony Gerdeman's Burner account, Tony is the smartest and best looking in my 100% unbiased opinion.
And Kevin, I would like you to cut that and then send me just a file of that so that I can have that at my disposal. But thank you, obviously, Tony Gerdeman's Burner account for that emphatic contribution. Steve Buckholz calls him a brown noser. No, just I don't want to see any infighting in the chat. Here's one from J Nips 15. Is it weird to go to a high school football game just for the concession stand hot dog? Depends on the price. Also, Tom, it depends on if you are in the stands taking a straw and hollowing out your hot dog so that you can drink your beer through it. And I think at some point we're going to have to do that.
You may have to do that. That's Tom. Why have you gone to well over 150 games at Shea Stadium and Citi Field in your entire life, and only gone to one at Yankee Stadium ever, despite living actually closer to Yankee Stadium than you did to Shea Stadium? Well, friends, if you've seen the video of the guy hollowing out the hot dog and drinking a beer through it, that was at the Yankee Stadium bleachers. Nope. I mean, I am not above like biting the end off of Twizzler and drinking like a Coke through there. You get like of that course. Kind of cool, like what a cherry or what is it? Red strawberry. It's been a long time since I had a Twizzler. Yeah, strawberry. Yeah.
Red.
Yes, a red Coke or whatever it is. Yes, but that was like that is a episode of. We haven't named our new dining segment. I will set that one out. I will just shoot that one while you and Kevin hollow out hot dogs. If you're going to a place, like, I don't know that a high school football game is the place that I would go to just like the weird non-restaurant place that you go to get a hot dog. You know what the low-key greatest hot dog is? Costco. Go to Costco. The hot dog is still $1.50 for a hot dog and a soda. And it's like a big hot dog. It's still very good. I don't think you really technically need to be a Costco member. I don't know if they make you scan your card. Yeah, you don't. So yeah, you can go in.
You don't go in through the store. You go by like the counter where you can sign up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is a low key real home run. If you've got hungry kids and it's like, well, I have 2 hungry children and I have exactly $3, and you know what? This problem just solved itself.
I like that Kevin probably has like 47 burner email accounts just to get $1.50 hot dogs at Costco. But I do see our super chats are now live and going.
We have a couple of super chats. Yeah, El Suzabo thanking Tom for his Aussie accent. We got some mixed reviews of it in the comments, but we certainly want to thank Sue for her contribution. And then Jordan Kapler. This is a panic question, so please read it as such. How come Ryan Day can't hear me when I'm yelling at him through my TV? And glad to see you all together again.
Yeah, it's good to be here. What I would suggest for Jordan, if you want Ryan Day to hear you yelling at him, go to the games and yell at him. Like with your loudest voice. Get as close to you as close to him as you possibly can. And then as the ushers and the redcoats and the police come to take you down, become even more belligerent, louder, and talk about don't tread on me, all of this stuff that will make you go viral. That way he will see it. Like, you really have to you can't just make a commotion. You have to go viral. You have to do something.
World
star.
So
he will see that. Yeah. World star. And getting back to Sue real quick before you guys take over.
This does not constitute legal advice, by the way.
No.
This is Tony Gerdeman is not speaking on behalf of the Buckeye Weekly podcast, BuckeyeHuddle.com, Kevin or myself. So you will have to just take it up with you will have to take it up with Tony and Tony alone if you do that and get choke slammed by Anthony Schlegel.
I don't think Sue was thanking you. She just said, I think she forgot this is for Tom stopping the Aussie accent. I think there's some extra words that she forgot in there.
Aussie accent school, perhaps, tuition.
So, yes, thank you all for those. And it's good to be back. And here's a good one from JJ. What weaknesses have you all seen in Noles' scheme and team's style of offense that could exploit that? And, there's answers for every defense. And Notre Dame has been studying Noles' defense since December 7th, maybe. So they know what the weaknesses are. You've talked to Ross and those guys, I'm sure, Tom, about this sort of thing. Has he given you anything as Ross or any of those guys?
Yeah, I don't know that there is, the one thing that's always going to beat this, because, what Noles does, one of Noles' things that he's really renowned for is his ability to sort of adjust. And, if you throw rock, well, he's going to change the defense to be paper instead of scissors. And so there's not one consistent thing that will necessarily beat this defense. If you're going 4-2-5, loading up in the Stanford offense and 3 tight ends and running over a smaller defense, maybe that's an option. But, he has the opportunity to, put in Court Williams instead of Tanner McAllister and sort of adjust to that. So, if there was one thing that was consistently going to beat it, you would see teams running that all the time, and you really haven't. So I think it's kind of it's a little bit of a developing thing where, if he's running one thing, well, then you're going to, there is an answer to that. And then once they put the answer to that out, then Noles has to put out an answer to that. So there's not like one easy, clean, simple answer to this question, I guess is the answer to this question.
That's why I sent it to you. I wanted you to stumble. But no, and we also, Kevin, we don't exactly know what this defense is going to look like from snap to snap, because one, it's evolving to what Ohio State has on the roster. So some of the things that he couldn't do at Oklahoma State, he can't do now. There's some things he could do at Oklahoma State with the Leo that he can't do yet because it's still a Jack and it's not a Leo yet. So it's not going to look exactly the same as Oklahoma State's defense.
Right. I mean, he had years to install it there. I mean, he was there several years, and we had the opportunity to talk to Jim Noles. I guess it was this week, where we talked about being up to 75% install of what the defense is, and you never want to get to 100%, and you don't want to throw things at the kids like, okay, well, we're getting ready for Wisconsin this week, and we know we're going to have to be more of a traditional 4-3. They're going to see that now. They're going to, instead of having it thrown in with no lead time or whatever. And, you want to hold some things back, which of course made me think, well, if we're not wanting to do it game week, I guess that would be stuff that we could potentially see for a bowl or something like that. But yeah, I mean, you can't just sit there and plug and play. And it's like, okay, this coach came over from XYZ school for an opposing team. We're going to watch everything he did there. And we're going to have the book on him there. Well, it doesn't work that way. That's not, it's not apples to apples. I mean, you can see what the coach likes to run, but Jim Noles also said that he does adapt, what it is that he's doing to the personnel that he has, and the personnel he has at Ohio State is very different than the personnel he had at Oklahoma State.
And he has talked about not needing a halftime to make adjustments. You got to make adjustments from one drive to the next, and that's what the versatility of his defense allows. Roger Smith, greetings, Tony, Kevin, and Tom. Assuming the D stays healthy, do you expect to see them improve throughout the season? Absolutely. I think what you see in September won't be what you see in December and January. It'll be better. It's just going to be incremental, like we saw in 2019, like we saw in 2014. But also, it's good at the start as well, and then it just keeps getting better. What you don't want to see is a bad defense that it improves to just good. Like, you'll need to see it should be good right away. Great, I don't know. And really, we've talked, Tom, in the past, the types of offenses that Ohio State is going to face, the defense should look pretty good against a batch of non-high-powered offenses.
Yeah, I mean, what to you is the best offense they're facing in the regular season this year? I mean, it feels like
Maryland,
maybe
yeah.
Michigan State. I mean, Maryland. I was going to say Maryland. It feels like they're in the conversation, and if Maryland's in the conversation, I mean, no offense to Maryland, but Maryland is not what anyone is projecting as like a 9-10 win team.
Michigan State at least should be multifaceted in terms of being able to throw and run. Maryland doesn't have a guy with the last name of McFarland on that roster right now. They're going to be throw. So I think that Michigan State, in my opinion, would be the answer, just because if you shut one thing down, they still have something else. If you can somehow shut down Maryland's throwing game, they're done.
Yeah, and there is not a 2019 LSU on this schedule. The tiers of offense, offensive explosiveness in the Big Ten, if you're going from like 0 to 5, there are probably a couple zeros in the Big Ten this year. Indiana might be a 0, and we'll see how the Connor Bazelak thing goes, but they might be a 0 or a 1. And it feels like there are teams that are probably up to maybe a 3, maybe Michigan's a 4, maybe. I think there's some. Yeah, I think the offense is going to be pretty good for Michigan, so maybe they're a 4. But Ohio State's a 5. So, and I don't know that Michigan is necessarily an explosive offense as much as they might be an efficient offense this year. They do have Ronnie Bell back, which I think is going to be a positive. But yeah, it doesn't feel like, unless Ohio State gets run over, if a real physical run team like a Wisconsin or an Iowa or a Michigan really runs them over, or maybe Notre Dame, the teams that are known for having good running attacks, and the passing attack involves the tight end a little more than you would think, that type of team, that might be the biggest threat to this Ohio State team. And that's just, they've spent the last 12 months hearing about how they're, they weren't tough enough last year and how they didn't stand up to those kind of teams. So I'm going to be very interested to see. I think week 1, we're going to know a lot about how Ohio State's going to respond to that type of a challenge this year.
One of the things that we want to discuss here is week 1. It's a big event, and so a lot of people are coming into town. What should fans be doing on a Saturday? What should they visit? Where should they go? How should they experience campus? Kevin, what would your suggestions be?
Yeah, it's been a while since I've gone and done a game not in a press capacity. So, for secrets of parking, make a day of it. Get there early. Find the best pay lot that you can get to. Don't pull a Clark Griswold and take the furthest spot out. Well, we'll be the first ones out. I remember back in the day having to park all the way out at, out on Ackerman, and that was a haul, especially a couple times when it rains. So, find that pay lot. Be ready to, I always, I don't even know what the things are. Back in the day, it used to be Heinegate, and I know Heinegate no longer exists, but over at Varsity Club, they have a great setup over there with, beverages and hot dogs. Hopefully you're not mixing the hot dogs and the beverages, as we talked about before. Be sure to wear some comfortable shoes. I would work my way through the tailgate lots. There are a lot of great fans out there, that are going to sit there and say, sure, come on by. My fraternity brothers have a tailgate, and I've brought members of the various sites that I've worked at. I'm sure it'll happen here at Huddle, and I'll just say, hey, let's swing by my buddy's tailgate. If you reach out to me, you got to hit Skull Session, and I don't know the timing on that. I never remember it, but 2 hours before apparently, and it's great, but you got to get there early, because there certainly is a capacity on what's going on at St. John Arena now. Maybe for Arkansas State, it won't be as crowded, because I'm not expecting to see the stands as crowded. but I want to make sure I'm in the stadium early. I want to be able to see, some of the pregame type of stuff. I'm not there for quick house. I just don't care about quick house. I'm sorry, Urban. I just don't care. So those are a couple of my thoughts off the top of my head. As somebody had asked me about this, and I was like, oh, that's a good question. I'm hoping that fans can chime in and that Tom and Tony can chime in, because I don't remember what I did. It was the dark ages back when I was going as a fan.
So if you're in from out of town, I guess the question is, how old are the people who are with you? If you have children with you, like, you should go to the Columbus Zoo on Saturday morning and do that. Like, that's a cool, that's a really, really good facility, good facility, great, reasonably priced. And if you're like in from out of town, you don't get to Columbus very often. Like, that's a good thing to do with kids on a Saturday morning. I just checked the forecast, 80 degrees, partly cloudy. No rain in the forecast as of right now, 8 days out. That's in stone. So just make your plans around that. No concerns at all. If you are, you want to go see downtown Columbus, if you're in downtown Columbus, you could go through the Short North. The Short North is kind of a cool artsy area with some, different kind of spots. On campus, go to the Beer Stube on South Campus. That is the, one of the few remaining surviving old-timey bars that has really not changed. Maybe the best jukebox in the city of Columbus at the Stube. Outer Inn, that's on North Campus. It's on Frambees, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's on Frambees on North Campus, just east of High Street. That's a good spot. Tony mentioned the Varsity Club on High Street. That gets real hopping on game days. Normally a good place to go get cheap, inexpensive beer. On game days, they will sell you a $5 can of Bud Light out on the back patio and play very loud music at you. But it is also kind of part of the Ohio State Gameday Experience. The Thirsty Scholar up kind of behind a gas station on the north side of
Lane and
Neal. Yep, kind of behind whatever that gas station is. That's kind of another place that's been around long enough that it has character and is kind of a good fun spot. But yeah, I'm all for Kevin's suggestion of just like walk through campus. I will sometimes go to like the Wexner Center for the Arts, walk across the Oval over on the way to the stadium. And here's a little life hack. Kevin mentioned going to your friends' tailgates. If you put on a white cowboy hat and a white cape, you can go to anyone's tailgates and help yourself to whatever you want. That's part of the Ohio Revised Code.
And if you bring photos of yourself, you can actually make some money. So you take the photos, you hand them out, and you charge them $5. I'm with you on walking campus. I'm planning to do that myself because it's been a while. But the Oval, I just have such great memories of being back in college, walking from my apartment on like North 4th, all the way to the shoe, and walking through frat row, and hearing all the music blasting. I'm not recommending families do that, but just go experience campus. Walk around, check out the buildings, check out the classrooms, or just see the campus. And you don't have to check out the medical campus. You don't have to go check out the ag campus unless that's where you're parked. But go check out the library, go check out the Oval. Heck, go check out the new Union. Like all of these new buildings that are fixed up in the last 10 years. Go see it and compare it to what we had to deal with, which is outrageous compared to what we were being forced to utilize. Our books, didn't even have covers in the library back in the day.
No. Check out Mirror Lake as well, but don't try and jump in it. That's not allowed anymore.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. But yeah, just experience it. Make a day of it. That's really my best advice. Just make an entire day of it. Get there early. And, we were talking about hot dogs earlier. Back in the day, they used to have some really good hot dogs on campus. I'm sure they still do. I'm sure the recipes and the hot dogs have not changed. And so if you're looking for a cheap lunch, do that. And then, walk around, sights, sounds, just soak it all in. That would be my biggest piece of advice. Let's see here. Question from El Suzabo. How confident are you guys that Justin Fry will improve our offensive line? That is my biggest concern, to be honest. Tom?
Improve how? Improve in recruiting? Improve on-field performance this year? Because, I think right now, if you ask most people, the biggest concern for the Ohio State offense is the offensive line, and probably specifically the interior of the offensive line. And I think we're probably 8 days away from finding out whether that's an interior offensive line question or a, boy, howdy, the interior of the defensive line sure is pretty good, isn't it, kind of question. Because it could kind of be either one, and it could be a mixture of those. I think they're going to be better. I would expect these short yardage, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, goal line to go situations. I think those you're probably going to see better, stats and better numbers this year, better performance. But the question is more how much better, because that was a real shortcoming last year, and I think they'll be, I think they're going to be better. I think the question is, will they be national championship caliber? Because it feels like everything else on the offense probably is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think you've answered it very well. But yeah, I do expect them to be improved, and you better. Steve Buckholtz, what is your take on the $100,000 to each football player deal? Kevin, you got any thoughts on? I assume that's what we're talking about. Just the amount of money that it takes to get players, keep players, and to keep them happy, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. I know that they launched that new NIL deal where it's kind of more of a website. That one, and I don't want to get too much into that because, all right, you're going to bring in a pool of money. The company that's running it's taking 18% off the top. And then, there are at least 75 football players that are already signed up for it. It says 75 plus. I mean, I assume that your CJ Strouds and your Trevion Hendersons probably not involved with it. You got to let everybody else eat at that point. But if we're just talking about what the kind of going rate is in terms of keeping players happy, I mean, it's where we are. The genie is out of the bottle at this point, and the expectation is that's what it's going to be. And then, the number's only going to go higher as you start to produce. I really wish that the NC2A would have been a little bit more forward thinking a couple years ago and had something that it brought out in steps of where things are going on. I'm not one of these guys, and I know that it was some former great that came out, but just football, not necessarily Ohio State, who said, I think that the money should go into a trust that gets released upon the end of their careers. I think it's important for these guys to get to eat and be able to kind of take care of their families. Their families certainly have sacrificed a lot during their childhoods, and not everybody's necessarily coming from great means. But I think that right now there's just too much. There are too many streams that are going on, and nobody knows really what's right, what's wrong. This group is doing well, but are they doing it? Are they doing it correctly? The good news is that we know the NC2A isn't going to do anything because that's just not their MO. I mean, if they get mad, they're just going to sit there and put some Division II school like on the death penalty or whatever. I don't think anybody's ever really going to be able to get their arms around NIL in its current form. I'm hopeful that we see something that is got a little bit more common sense to it, but why start now?
I think we're seeing that regular Joe fans aren't overly wanting to just give their money away. And because I'm looking at the site that you're talking about now, they're up to $2,800. And that's of their $50,000 monthly goal. That's every month they want $50,000 to support 80 plus players. And now they're at about $35 per player that has signed up. And we've seen the original, the foundation, I think the one started by Schottenstein. Yeah, that he continually has to ask for money. And I think you're seeing the people see all of the money out there and are like, why does it have to come from me? I'm already paying for tickets. I'm already paying for cable. I'm already providing the money that is going to all of these schools and coaches. I think there's going to be some growing support for what we might see from the Big Ten, which Kevin Warren has talked about, with sharing some of that revenue with the players. It will need to be I don't know, collectively bargained in some way, no unions or anything, but you've got these groups that can agree to do some stuff. And I think that's where the real money is. It's not from, you giving $20 a month to a collective and being one of like 200 people doing it so that a nose tackle can get $35 this week. And it's just, it doesn't really make sense. And they're trying to promise a bunch of different things. And it's, at the end of it, it's like, I've already, my cable bill is this high because ESPN costs this much. Fox costs this much with the Big Ten Network and all of the cable that I'm doing there. If I want to go to a game, which I do, and I'll go to, like Joe Fan going to a game, that's going to be, there's $500 that I, $600, $700, $800 that I just spent. And what about a road game? Like talking with a viewer of the podcasts and a listener today, they are Northwestern people and Ohio State people. They're in Dublin right now for tomorrow's game. And then they're going to be at the Notre Dame game, which is by far probably the best 8-day experience of a college football fan ever, to be experiencing both of those things. But they have invested way more than, like they've already given enough, that sort of thing. And I just don't know that with so many bills that we have, do you want to make a collective another one of your monthly bills?
Yeah. And, I think people are also probably looking at some of the economic realities of the world right now and like, hey, gas costs a lot more than it did a couple of years ago. And, hey, the steak that I want to grill at my tailgate costs a lot more than it did a couple of years ago. And, hey, in addition to all the cable bill stuff I need to pay, now I need to get Peacock too, because Ohio State may be on Peacock. So there's another $5 a month. I mean, all that stuff just kind of adds up. And I think, the average Ohio State fan does not go on the road with Ohio State all that often. It's a lot of fun. Like a road trip is always a lot of fun, and you can do it relatively cheaply. Like we were all in college back in the day. I did a overnight road trip to Iowa City, which is not the most conveniently located campus in the Big Ten, and drove there on a Friday night into Saturday morning, slept in the car in the parking lot, watched Ohio State beat Iowa in 1998 in the week after the Michigan State debacle, and then drove home and, nearly fell asleep driving on I-70 around the Dayton area because it was like, boy, this was a really stupid way to do this. But, you can do it that way. You can do it relatively inexpensively. But, the average fan is not, the average Ohio State fan goes to less than one Ohio State game a year. There's only 7 home games at 100,000 people. So that's 700,000 people. Probably half of those people are there, most of the game. So figure there's 300,000, 400,000 people who go to an Ohio State game in any given year. Most people are going to go maybe go to a spring, go to the spring game or something like that. That's a fun, that's an easy way to go to games. But yeah, it's expensive to do. And, I think people are looking at money right now and kind of going, it's not, we may not be in the most rollicking of economic times. So yeah, I'm not super surprised that, fundraising for that is maybe not going as smoothly as they might have hoped. It's early.
You look at the schools that seem to be doing NIL well. Let's just use Texas A&M as an example. It's not, it's not just, all the rank and file alumni and fans and stuff that are kicking in $15-20. It's the oil tycoon that is putting in a lot of money. It's the members of, they're big. They have I think it's called the Century Club. It's the members of the Century Club that are kicking in a good amount of money in terms of their alumni association. They're not doing it on 5s and 10s a month. They're doing it on a much larger scale. And like with anything, it's a matter of throwing a lot of stuff against the wall, see what sticks, what works, what doesn't work, and you kind of go on from there. I think one thing, though, I'll go back to is I think it's really important, and I like seeing it when the players that are kind of like, the stars, like Trevion Henderson taking his offensive lineman to Jeff Ruby to, for a steak dinner and a bunch of, gifts and everything else, which is akin to things that you see in the NFL. Granted, Trevion Henderson isn't going to buy all of his offensive linemen Rolex watches because the dollars are very different. But, I think that there's certainly a way that guys can kind of get taken care of. And I was talking to a friend of mine who was a bar owner up in far northwest Ohio, and he was talking about wanting to get like a walk-on to do something with him or whatever, just because there aren't any scholarship players for Ohio State up there. I mean, there's going to be an opportunity. A lot of these NIL deals, a lot of the money that's going out to NIL are not Dr. Pepper Fansville or these giant things. They're much smaller. Bob Smith's GMC dealership or whatever. You'll sign some pictures, do an appearance, and get whatever. I mean, which is again still different than maybe Mark Wahlberg Chevrolet here, where some of the star players are getting leases on cars.
Yeah, I'm looking at the average donation of the website we're talking about. It's $21 from 135 people, and then like I said, they're going to want that every month, and it's Ohio State football has already priced out the average person in terms of going to games. Like the average person can't afford to go, especially if you've got kids, and so this is another way to support, but I don't know that it's really up anybody's alley. Question from JJ: what is the best Ohio State away game food? I hear the Nebraska Runza is good. Tom, we partook of the Runza 4 years ago. I don't know. And 3 years ago, after a late night of study, and then it was like an early lunch type of thing for the Runza on Saturday, and I really enjoyed it. I couldn't finish it all. It was almost the perfect kind of hangover food had anybody been hungover, which there were none, but like it's very heavy and it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's kind of like, if you haven't had it, it's kind of like an Eastern European version of a burrito almost, where it's kind of like wrapped up in its cabbage and meat and that kind of stuff, all kind of wrapped up in almost like a burrito kind of thing. The other thing that they have there, which neither of us got, which is kind of as weird as it is to say that the dish that the restaurant is named after is not the signature dish, but kind of the signature thing there is chili and cinnamon rolls. We didn't even do that. So that's the next time we get out there, we've got to do chili and cinnamon rolls at Runza. But yeah, Runza's a good one. I mean, there's always really good food, kind of no matter where you go. When we went to Rutgers last year, it was like, what are we gonna do for breakfast? I'm like, I got it. We're going to go to a place. I don't even care which place. It's going to be the best breakfast sandwich you ever got. And we just, went on Yelp and went, breakfast near me, and walked into a bagel place and just got, pork roll, egg and cheese sandwich. And, we ate it the first day and they're like, we should go back the second day. And then we went back the second day, and Tony got yelled at for trying to order too many bagels because Tony doesn't know how to do you can't take him anywhere. So, but yeah, it feels like almost no matter where you go, there's going to be a good local place. I think the key word in there is local. Mm-hmm. Like, don't just go to, like, yes, there's a Cracker Barrel in every Big Ten city. Doesn't mean you have to go there. Like, go find the local place. Ask someone who's local. When we were in Penn State 2 years ago, it was just like, Bill Landis, where should we go get? Because Bill Landis went to Penn State. So it was like, Bill Landis, where should we go get lunch? And it was like, okay, he told us it was just a burger place near campus. Okay, we went there. Hey, guess what? It was good. Ask a local, just while you're walking around, hey, stop someone on the street. What's a good local place that I can't get anywhere else? Go there.
Like Matt's Bar in Minneapolis is like a complete dive looking bar, and it's very good and very packed. Let's see, what do we have next?
I had a good question.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find it. Here we go.
From Florida Buckeye. Hey guys, compared to years past, what are your levels of optimism given the knowns of this Buckeye team? And I think one of the interesting things about camp, as we, what have we learned about camp? They came into camp with no position battles. That's pretty crazy to think about. Like, every job is settled. and maybe you say, well, Julian Fleming and Emeka Egbuka, something like that. But as Brian Hartline has said, like they're all going to play. So like really there's no necessarily a starting job there. It feels like everything is settled, and the unknowns are, I think there are a lot of unknowns on defense, but they should all be okay. I don't know if they're going to be great. Like Ronnie Hickman is going to be fine. Is he going to be great? I don't know. Zach Harrison will be fine. Is he going to be great? I don't know. The linebackers will be fine, but will they make the defensive scheme better, or will the scheme make them better? I'm not sure. I just think that the level of questions and concerns is low, and I'm trying to think back how it was in 2019. Like, what were the concerns there for the new defense? You know, Jeff Hafley talked a really good game and backed it all up. I think Jim Knowles has been talking a really good game, and we'll see. But I feel pretty optimistic about the knowns, I guess, is actually the question here. Like, who is of the knowns? Like, what do you feel, Tom? Like, what's the least optimistic of the knowns at this point?
It's
corner,
probably,
I don't know.
Yeah, on defense, it's probably just, how close to 100% are all the corners? That's probably the biggest concern on defense. On offense, it's probably the interior of that offensive line. But I mean, those are questions that we might have answers to those 2 weeks into the season, or I mean, you might feel like you have an answer to, if the offensive line looks good against Notre Dame's defensive line, you might feel like you've got an answer on that in the second quarter against Notre Dame. I think you got to go back, 2021, they were replacing a lot. And, the expectation was this is going to be a very good Ohio State team. I don't think, national championship or bust was kind of the conversation there, but it was, this is probably a playoff caliber Ohio State team. 2020, with all the uncertainty around the team, there was just, it was hard to kind of know what to expect. Last year, the defense itself was kind of a concern, just coming off of what was a shaky 2020, and would they be able to be that much better? That was kind of the question. I think, you go back to 2019 now and you look and you're like, wow, that team was loaded. They had everything, incredible defense, incredible offense. Going into that season, I remember thinking like, yeah, I mean, Justin Fields should be good, but Justin Fields wasn't a totally known commodity coming into that 2019 season. Like, you knew what the recruiting rankings were. You knew what the conversation around him was. You knew he had incredible arm strength. But, he was 4 for 13 in the spring game or something like that. And, I think we were talking about him as a, boy, if he could be a 60% passer, that would be a pretty good season. And then he ended up being like a 70% passer that year, and 41 touchdowns and 3 interceptions or whatever it was, and just completely blowing those expectations out of the water. So, I mean, really the knowns right now for this team might even be a little bit ahead of where the knowns were for that team, because it's like, it feels like you kind of know what you have with CJ Stroud. So, I mean, this feels like it almost might be the most known Ohio State team since maybe 2015, which, and then that season didn't go nearly as well as other seasons have gone. So nothing here is guaranteed, but it feels like Ohio State is as well positioned to be a national championship game participant / winner than they have been in a number of years.
And that 2015 team, as I've always said, was just fat and happy about winning it in 2014. So to compare it to this year in terms of known and to be concerned about the levels of known quantities, like, I wouldn't. It was just a team that won it all the year before, celebrated, had a great time, and started the season with like 5 guys on suspension. So to give you an idea. Ooh, here's a good one, Tom. But first, we'll let Kevin address this one as he's typing, because I'll read it for you, Kevin.
Okay. I was looking up for the next question. Something for the next question.
Okay. From Carl Segasser, 2525, Mike Valenti on Detroit radio suggested that J.J. McCarthy should go ahead and hit the transfer portal now that Cade McNamara has been named the starter. Is that news? Has Cade McNamara been named the starter, which I guess isn't a surprise, but I don't think McCarthy's going to go anywhere, because I think McCarthy has a hint, Kevin, that he's probably going to be the starter by the end of the season.
Well, we'll see. How do you sit there and get rid of the guy in Cade McNamara that got them, past Ohio State, got them through the Big Ten championship game, got them a college football playoff appearance. That's about as much as I can say there at that point. I don't know what you're gaining right now by transferring right this minute anyway. I mean, okay,
Nothing.
yeah, you go somewhere and you're not going to play at Michigan, or you're not going to go play at this new school as you have a day or 8 days before that team starts playing. So you may as well sit there and write it out with Michigan. I think Jim Harbaugh is going to still find a way to try and play both of them to a certain extent. McCarthy can do things that McNamara can't do, and vice versa. And you know what? If you get to a point and you're not liking what's going on at that point, I mean, why don't you transfer in the traditional window of when people normally leave in December or January? So I don't think that there's any huge upside of bailing now at this point. But Mike Valenti does put on an entertaining show, and I'm probably go back and listen to some cut-ups from it, because I'd like to hear what he's saying, and then go in and read Michigan Twitter and listen to them all call Mike Valenti an idiot.
Well, isn't he a Spartan homer?
Yes.
So do the math on that one. Yes, of course, he's stirring that pot, and he does it well, and he's been doing it for a very long time. I think McCarthy plays the waiting game because he knows that he's really, really good, and at some point they're going to need him, and it would shock me if he doesn't end up starting at some point this season, whether it's, due to a loss at Iowa where McNamara just looks like Todd Beckman against USC. And then it's just time to make the move. Let's just do it now, or after a bye week or something like that, where you've got time. Yeah, I think they saw how far McNamara can get them, but I think McCarthy can get them farther.
The ceiling with McCarthy feels higher. It's just going to be a weird dynamic on that team, because you've got McNamara named a captain. There's an article from mlive.com that says you probably won't see a starter for week 1. That's in quotation marks, so that's probably from Jim Harbaugh, and it was 2 days ago. So
nobody's going to start?
Yeah, no one is going to run out. They're just going to snap the ball to no one. Michigan takes a safety on the opening play of the season. I mean, it's a bold strategy, Cotton. I'm with Kevin. I don't think there's any reason to transfer at this point. Like, if you were going to transfer, you transfer after spring ball. Right now, it feels like you're going to put Cade McNamara out there because Cade McNamara is the guy who got you to where he got you last year, and you kind of have to let him lose the job. It's, it is Stetson Bennett's job to lose at Georgia, even if they probably do have a more talented guy sitting behind him right now. And it's Cade McNamara's job at Michigan, even if they do have a more talented guy kind of sitting behind him. You do wonder how long that's going to take before that happens, because their schedule is so weak that I don't know that they're necessarily going to run into a problem until, you mentioned the Iowa game. I don't remember. Did they have Wisconsin this year? They might have Wisconsin this year, so maybe Wisconsin gets them.
They do not.
They do not? Okay. Yeah, so maybe Michigan State. It's just there's not that many games on the schedule for them that are that losable that I think you're going to run into an issue where, it's like, oh boy, Cade McNamara cost them a game. And now, they don't have 2008 USC on the schedule this year.
Devin, the top 5 teams in your opinion, we've got the AP top 5 of Alabama, OSU, Georgia, Clemson, and Notre Dame. I'd probably agree with that top 4. I think Notre Dame is pretty high on this one, and I guess maybe the voters are high as well. But Texas A&M at 6, I think that's kind of high because they have quarterback issues as well. Could I go Utah at number 5? Perhaps. Michigan at 8, I think is high. So I don't know if I don't know if there is a top 5. I think it's only top 4, and that's including Clemson because of their defense, and the offense can't possibly be as bad as it was last year, right?
Well, this is a year where it feels like there's a top 2, and then there's a number 3, and then there's a big gap. I don't remember which rating system it was now. It might have been SP+. One of the advanced rating system, the gap from 3 to 4 was as big as the gap from like 4 to 16 or 4 to 18 or something like that. It's just there's Alabama and Ohio State, and they're kind of in a tier by themselves. And then there's Georgia, and Georgia's probably lost enough guys off that defense that they're not quite at that Alabama, Ohio State level. And those are the three that feel like pretty much sure things this year. And after that, it's like, well, Clemson replaced both coordinators this year. Mm-hmm. And DJ Uiagalelei was not very good last year. And, is this a season where you have, the Trevor Lawrence jumps in the middle of the season to save the season from Kelly Bryant after they kind of just don't do a whole heck of a lot in the first half of the season because they've got Cade Klubnik, who is a very, very highly touted 5-star. I think he's a true freshman this year. Mm-hmm. Maybe he comes in and, takes that kind of role halfway through the season if DJ Uiagalelei can't do it. But you also have, Brian Brzee, who is a 5-star defensive lineman who Ohio State really wanted that ended up at Clemson. You got Miles Murphy. I mean, you've got a lot of talent there at Clemson on defense, but you got a couple of coordinators. There's questions there. Texas A&M, you mentioned the quarterback situation. I mean, Texas A&M also does not have a particularly easy schedule. So, Texas A&M could be a pretty good team that also loses 3 games. That's a real possibility this year. You said Michigan might be too high. I don't know. Michigan might be too low. Michigan is, I'm kind of, the more I look at Michigan, the more I'm kind of buying in because I think the offensive line should be pretty good. They've got a couple pretty good running backs. I think the quarterback situation, one way or the other, will be okay. Getting Ronnie Bell back at wide receiver, you get a pretty good tight end in Eric All. It's like, that's a pretty good offense. They have to figure out, how do you replace the pass rush? And if they can't replace the pass rush that they lost with Hutchinson and Ajabo, well, then you got to be real good on the back seven. The back seven really didn't get tested all that much last year. That's a little bit of a question, but I mean, that's a Michigan team that's going to be 10-1 or 11-0 coming into that Ohio State game, I think. So, and I think they're going to be by that point good enough. They probably will have figured out enough answers that, they probably are legitimately a top 5 type team at that point of the season.
I will buy in when they get past Iowa, but they're going to be top 5 and through that because Colorado State, Hawaii, Connecticut, Maryland are their first 4 games. And then they go to Iowa. And if they win that one, then, they very well could be undefeated by the time they get to Ohio State. And it wouldn't be a huge shock because the schedule, it really sets up well for them. So I think whether they are overrated or not, that's where they're going to be. They're just because they're already there and they're just going to stay there and perhaps move up. And then when they are against equal talent where the talent is equated, we'll see what happens with them. I want to touch on a comment here from Gary K that is in our chat here. People forget that Notre Dame is starting a new quarterback with very little game experience, or at least big game experience. Tyler Buckner is named their starting quarterback. He played in 10 games last year. I think he's a redshirt freshman. And if I tell you that in 6 of those games, he completed 100% of his passes, are you impressed by that, Tom? Because 1 game he was 3 for 3. 2 games he was 2 for 2. Oh, I see. Actually, 2 games he was 3 for 3. 2 games he was 2 for 2, and 2 games he was 1 for 1. So a perfect whatever for whatever in those 6 games to give you a Tate Martellian glimpse of what this man can do, who also finished second on the team in rushing last year.
He is, basically the quarterback equivalent of Nick Saban's regular season non-conference road record, where it's like, what's his winning percentage? 1,000. How many games has he played to get that 1,000 winning percentage since he took over in 2007? Tony, how many was it?
Both of them.
Both of them. Yes, indeed. Yes. And at least one of them was Penn State in the wake of the Joe Pa scandal, where they were just an absolute disaster in 2013 or so, 2012.
It was 11.
Was it 11? Okay. So, so then it wasn't even in the wake of the Joe Pa scandal.
It was at the end of.
It was in the wake of Joe Pa. Yes.
Yes.
And yes, before the the sanctions had really hit, but when Joe Pa not recruiting at all outside of campus had already hit. So yeah, that was a very strategic decision. And then I don't remember what the other one was, but
Duke. Oh, Duke, it was like 2010, 2011, 2009, 2010 in there.
Was that one of the good Krzyzewski teams, or
No, it was when his back was out for the season, and they were really bad that year. So
okay, yeah. So the signature win was against a 2011 Penn State team that finished 6-6, maybe something like that. So yeah. Anyway, so back to Tyler Buchner. Yeah, we'll see. It is, I mean, Ohio Stadium is probably not as intimidating a venue as it could be and should be. It will get loud sometimes, but it doesn't stay loud. And I saw people kind of giving Michael Mayer, the Notre Dame tight end, blowback for saying like, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like every other stadium we've played in. But, Ohio Stadium at night is like, yeah, it can get loud. It can be a great environment. But also, Ohio State has lost a bunch of those non-conference home games, primetime home games or daytime home games or whatever it is over the last few years. So it's not like that's, I didn't really have a big problem with the Michael Mayer comments. But yeah, as far as Tyler Buchner goes, yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think the bigger issue Notre Dame is going to have is not just that they have an inexperienced quarterback, but just that the wide receiver, like they don't really have the wide receivers to really stress the Ohio State defense, I don't think, which is going to put a lot of pressure on that run game and on, the short passing game. And if Ohio State can kind of sit on the short passing game, or if Ohio State's up by 14 points in the middle of the first quarter and you start getting Notre Dame a little more, forcing Tyler Buchner to, do something and to beat you, that's where I think they might have an issue.
Yeah, I think with him, he does pose some concerns after the snap and breaking out and extending plays that I am interested to see how this defense handles and whether they force him into that or it's a coverage thing, and then just keep him moving, keep him guessing. And if he beats you, now R.I.P. Bino Cook would be talking about 3 Heismans for Tyler Buchner at the end of his career. Kevin, you want to take this one? Mike, 3883. Any thoughts on people predicting OSU and the Wolverines making the playoffs?
Well, I know people desperately want to put 2 Big Ten teams in the playoffs because what are we going to see out of the Pac-12? What are we going to see out of the Big 12? I mean, if not Clemson, what do we see out of the ACC? So, I think that there is, a movement out there, people thinking that could be the case, that, Michigan starting, top 10 preseason, has a pretty easy schedule, should probably look pretty good up through into November, and then we'll see what happens at Ohio Stadium at the end of November. But I don't know. The lack of, they don't play anybody. I mean, even if they go undefeated, and I know it's like, all right, if you're in a Power 5 conference and you go undefeated, and under this scenario, I mean, I'm assuming that they lose to Ohio State. I mean, they don't have the 13th data point in the conference championship game. They don't have any good wins, honestly. You can sit there and say what you will about the Big Ten being the second best league or whatever. I mean, the schedule maker didn't really challenge them, in my opinion, with what they have there. So it's a fun discussion point, but I kind of see it as a bit of a pipe dream or nightmare, depending on your point of view.
Yeah, if they don't beat Ohio State, if Michigan doesn't beat Ohio State and they're 11-1, their best win is, well, we'll see what the rankings end up being, but it would be Iowa or Michigan State or Penn State, and Penn State's not in the top 25 right now. I'm not sure Iowa and Michigan State are all that high there either. And I think it was on the Mark Rogers show, I was talking about it could come down to Texas A&M as a third SEC team or Michigan as the second Big Ten team. And if Texas A&M's only loss is at Alabama and Michigan's only loss is at Ohio State, it becomes a beauty contest at that point. And I could look at Texas A&M's schedule to see what kind of wins they would have. They'd have a win over LSU, Ole Miss, Arkansas. So it's like Miami is their non-conference game. They'd have a win over Florida. So there's, it's probably better than Michigan's slate, but Tom, the likelihood of 3 SEC teams making it into the playoffs?
It doesn't seem super likely. I mean, the juxtaposition of the Alabama win over Texas A&M and the Ohio State win over Michigan in this case is really interesting because it feels like both of those teams, Ohio State and Alabama, are probably going to be a little bit motivated to, deliver a beating with some kind of enthusiasm if they have the opportunity to do that this year. In those particular games for, various off-field reasons and on-field reasons. So, if one of those teams really smokes the other one and the other one loses close, maybe that's what the deciding factor is there. I find it difficult to believe that they're going to put 3 teams in the same conference. And you think about how much blowback they get when they put 2 teams in from the same conference. Putting 3 in, you'd probably have to have, for a non-divisional winning Texas A&M, in this case, you'd probably have to have a 2-loss ACC champion, which is possible, but it feels like Clemson or NC State might do that at 12-1. You'd have to have, I really find it difficult to believe they're going to put someone in over, put a third SEC team in over like an 11-1 Michigan, especially if that Ohio State game is a 10-point game, something like that. You'd have to have a 2-loss Big 12 champion, whether that's Baylor or Oklahoma State or someone else. You'd have to have a 2-loss Pac-12 champion, which is, whether that's USC or Oregon or Utah, whoever that is. It just feels like, one of the big data points in this might happen week 1 when Utah goes to Florida. If Utah goes to Florida and loses, that's a big blow to the big Pac-12's championship hope, college football playoff hopes this year. If they can win that game, and I think they can, you potentially are having, that potentially positions Florida or Utah to have, you're 12-1, you've won the Pac-12, you've potentially beaten USC, you've potentially beaten Oregon or someone like that in the Pac-12 championship game. I think that it's going to be in the committee's, the committee is going to want to have this be a little bit more of a national event and not just 3 SEC teams and, Ohio State. That's not in the college football playoffs' best interest. I think there's plenty of very reasonable arguments to be made against that. So I don't see 3 SEC teams happening. I'm sure it will be a talking point all fall, and we will all be dumber for it.
I want to thank you all for being here. We are now headed into hour 2 of this one, discussing the Ohio State football camp, the upcoming game against Notre Dame, and some breaking news here that when you do go to Ohio Stadium to watch that game, you will be seeing them play on Safe Light Field at Ohio Stadium. A new field sponsor, the first on-field logos on the Ohio Stadium turf, and now I guess we're going to call it Safe Light Field. Now, it's not one of these things where we have to say that all the time, I'm guessing. Or ever. But yes, Safe Light Field. It's still Ohio Stadium, but the actual turf, if you're going to refer to it, you can no longer call it Ohio Stadium turf. I guess you have to call it Safe Light Field, which remember when they tried to sponsor the Michigan game? Like when a sponsor came in and everybody said no. I guess this just goes to show that these schools, these programs aren't making enough money from the networks. So now you've got to put a logo on your field. Okay, that's fine. But then also naming rights to the field. So there we go. Safe Light Field, the newest addition to Ohio Stadium.
And that will be the last time anyone says that name on this show. That's the rule. Sorry.
Can I call it the Safe or the Light?
No, you may not. You may refer to it as the turf, the fake grass, the
windshield.
No, I don't think so.
The shield.
Yeah. No. Keep going. Actually, you know what? Don't keep going. That's
fine. How about Danger Light?
Yeah, we will accept Ohio Stadium, the horseshoe. There are people that find the shoe objectionable. I am not one of them. References to the banks of the Olentangy, that's fine. But no. I'm just glad that finally the athletic department folks can stop standing on the corner of Olentangy and Lane, wearing nothing but a barrel and suspenders and rattling a tin cup. It has been a desperate few years, and a very bleak future financially as well for the athletic department. So I'm glad that they have been able to finally solve this issue and get some money into their empty coffers.
Yeah, they're no longer shaking a cup on High Street. This maybe will get them through the year. And then,
Tony, would you say that help is in fact on the way?
It sure sounds like it. A safe light of help is definitely on the way. Did they disclose the money? No, I don't believe they don't do that. That's probably something that's going to have to be FOIA'd. They don't like to talk about money as they emblazon logos and things everywhere. But the field will now feature 2 white safe light placements opposite the Big Ten logos. So I hope you don't get confused which network or which conference that the Buckeyes belong to. Like if you we're in the East Division of the Safe Light Conference. But no. You're looking at the wrong logo. They're actually in the Big Ten Conference. So so there you go. That's great news. Super chat from Bilal Asaf. Is this invisible ink? I cannot see. Did he type this in yellow text against yellow background?
I think he's just appreciative of the show. He's been mixing it up in the chat a little bit. I'm trying to see if there's a question that I can punch through on that. But
is this penance for mixing it up in the chat? Is this like
he's
apology?
Perfectly fine. No.
But thank you for that anyway. And if you have a question, go ahead and throw it to us, and we'll get to it right away. So I'm sorry to bring everybody down with the sponsorship, but when news breaks, we have to talk about it, no matter how tragic. Here's one from PFlaw317. Which of the recent OSU transfers will make the most noise this season? Seven Banks, Legend Cavazos, Ryan Watts, Cormonte Hamilton, Jack Miller, Quinn Ewers, and also noting that we faced Brian Snead of Arkansas State, former Buckeye running back. I'm going to have to go ahead and say the starting quarterback at Texas is going to make the most noise this season, and he could make the most noise this season if he goes 0 for 2 throwing the ball, and that's it. Like only one start, throws 2 passes. He is still going to overwhelm the noise that everybody else makes, and I, for one, am looking forward to it. Who do they open with? I'm not sure that's it's going to be on the Longhorn Network, so nobody's going to get to see it.
I think it's Louisiana Monroe. So they open with Terry Bowden. And then they play Alabama week 2, which should be fine. It feels like I am not trying to be a hater here, but it feels like a freshman quarterback who's never thrown a pass before behind what is generally not a great Texas offensive line might get turned into chunky marinara by Will Anderson and the rest of that Alabama defense, which that feels like that might be not a great situation to get thrown into as a starter whose only prep is, well, we played Louisiana Monroe, so now we're ready for anything.
Is this a thing where Sark, because for a while the rumors were that Hudson Card would be the starter, and it's like, well, you throw Hudson Card out there, and then he's going to get beaten up by Alabama, and then it's like, okay, now we'll go to Quinn Ewers. Is this a thing where he's maybe throwing Quinn Ewers to the Wolves so that the boosters can back off of him, all of the people paying for Quinn Ewers to come back home to Texas? Is this a way for him to be like, here, you got what you wanted. Now look at it. And he was, he's like 7 for 28 against Alabama, and it's time to go to Hudson Card. Is there any of that? Is this a control issue? Does anybody think that?
That's a pretty skeptical way to look at things. I happen to like that, but or Quinn Ewers just was better than Hudson Card, but it's going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible week 2. I can't see a scenario of where that Alabama pass rush doesn't make mincemeat out of poor Quinn Ewers and that mullet. There's not going to be enough holy kombucha to make him feel good at that point. But I think at some point that there probably was a little bit of pressure of, we went to all this effort and outlaid all this money to get Quinn Ewers back, and Hudson Card, he was out of, I think Austin Westlake, one of the local schools or whatever. Maybe you do sit there and say, well, tie goes to the phenom at this point, and we'll see. I mean, if he goes out against Ulamo and is like 19 of 24 with like 3 touchdowns or whatever, that's only going to make it worse, because then there's going to be, there's just going to be this belief of, we got our guy, he's going to get this done. And then they're going to sit there and they're going to get just steamrolled.
Well, if you look at the last decade or so of Texas football, about 85% of the issues there stem from letting the boosters drive the bus a little too much. And it feels like, boy, if you haven't learned that lesson yet, that's probably not that's not a great one. You're setting him up as a second game starter to be in that position against Nick Saban, who is pretty good at designing defenses, you guys, and who has some pretty good talent all across that defense, you guys. And it just seems like you were setting him up for a very, very bad situation. And I could absolutely see this being, boosters or other interested supporters involved in the situation, really pushing, look, he's the guy, he's your guy, you got to let him be the guy. Like that feels like a monkey paw curled somewhere when that got approved.
I'm expecting, hoping he lights Alabama up, and the amount of coverage that he will get the next week, like they will be talking about him even on ESPN when they should be talking about the NFL. Like they're going to be talking about Quinn Ewers, and everybody's going to be like, and I mentioned Ron Paulus earlier. That was 30 years ago, where I don't even remember who Ron Paulus beat, but Beano Cook immediately like deemed that he would be a 3-time Heisman winner. We know that's not going to happen with Quinn Ewers. He can only win 2 because he'll go pro after next year. So he'll have to end up just tying Archie. But if he lights up Alabama, that's going to be a significant thing. And then the next week comes out and is like 7 for 18 against Texas San Antonio. But hey, you beat Alabama. It's, as we know, this will just be the 3rd time that Alabama has gone on the road in the non-conference. So they don't like the road. Nick Saban does not like the road. It's scary. It's dangerous. And if Texas may just be back. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm sure this is coming across as like, oh, these haters don't believe in Quinn Ewers. Like, I'm sure he's going to be a good quarterback, but that is not going to be a good situation. It is really not going to be a good situation. And, if you have you watched Texas offensive line play at any point in the last decade and thought, you know what these guys need? Tougher competition. That's what they need. It's like Texas is like Penn State, where it's just like, well, if they ever had an offensive line, maybe it would. Nope. Like didn't Texas go like 6 or 8 years without ever having an offensive lineman drafted? Like, Like, I'm sure like everyone looks at Texas and goes, well, they've got Quinn Ewers and Bijan Robinson, and those guys are both great. So I'm sure it's going to go fine. And they've got Xavier Worthy. It's like, okay. How's the line looking? Because that's the actual answer. And if the answer is not good, then that's also the answer to how's this going to go?
Well, to your question about how has the line looked, I don't know. I'm usually averting my eyes, so I am missing a lot. I will admit that. JJ says here, I want to see what Nebraska looks like this weekend. We all do. We all are hoping that Nebraska looks competent and 4 quarters of competency. Actually, I'll take 3. Just make sure they're the last 3. You can be a clown car in the first quarter, but turn into like a town car through the last 3 quarters. Do something well. Look competent. Look like you know what you're doing. And I'm concerned that Nebraska is going to be so tight for this game, and Northwestern isn't, that even, you hear the stories of somebody falling out of a plane and they land, and the reason they didn't die is because they weren't tense. I think I think if you threw Nebraska out of a plane right now, they would shatter into a billion pieces. Nebraska, meanwhile, would just roll with it, and they'd be like, "Oh, let's do it again." They'd be like the iron slide in Michigan that has gone viral. Like Northwestern would just be, "Yeah, this is tremendous," and whereas Nebraska would be like flying off of this thing and killing spectators because they're so rigid.
I don't even know how to follow that one up. I'm rarely at a loss for words, but Tony, you have I don't know.
Kevin, can you take this to a 2-shot for me in time then, please?
Remember Ferris Bueller discussing how Cameron and a lump of coal and what he could do with it in 2 weeks? It does feel like you might, if Nebraska comes out a little slowly at the start of the game, it feels like you might have that kind of situation because, Scott Frost is not an idiot. I think Scott Frost knows the situation, which is you won 3 games last year. Do you know the last time Nebraska made a bowl game? This is one of these things that, you're like thumbing through the preseason magazines and every once in a while you're like, that can't be right. When was the last time what was the last season that Nebraska made a bowl game?
Was it 2013?
2016. See, there you go. There you go, ruining everything.
Sorry.
1892. No, Tony. Thank you for ruining everything.
So it was recent.
Yeah, 2016. Yes. That was that's just for a program of Nebraska's caliber to go that long without even being like a 6-6 kind of team. That's remarkable. They really need a 6-6 kind of season. And they have, if you look at their schedule, they probably have 5 games that you look at and go, yeah, they should win these 5 games. And then there's 3 to 4 that are kind of toss-ups that, you can get to 6 without even having them playing Michigan enter into the conversation. You win your 5 winnable ones, and then you beat either Purdue or Iowa or like Minnesota. And then you get to 6 and then you're bowl eligible and everything's probably fine. But that Northwestern game is one of those that you've got, that's one of the 5 you've got to get. And you saw last year losing a week 0 game that you should have won away from home against a team from the state of Illinois. You saw what that's, the snowball that started rolling downhill next year. They better, I am very optimistic that Nebraska is going to look competent and, put together, 3 to 4 good quarters and win that game by, 2 touchdowns, give or take. I think that's very realistic. I think, but boy, they better win that game, even if it's just by 1 point. Like, you'd better win that game. You'd better start 1-0, or that you're going to have a real uphill climb to get to bowl eligibility.
I think what's going to happen is Trev Alberts is going to make Scott Frost give him his passport. And if you want it back, you win. If you lose, you're not getting it back. You're going to have to stay overseas. As Tyler Shoemaker says,
worse than getting fired on the tarmac.
Yes, it is worse. It's like you're not even allowed back in the country. We not only do we not want you back in the state of Nebraska, we don't even want you in the same country that Nebraska resides in. Tyler Shoemaker saying that the line is now down to Nebraska -11. I think it was like 14.5 or 15 a few days ago, to tell you how everybody feels that line was clearly too high, and everybody sees like, yeah, I think Nebraska is going to win. But you're asking me to express a lot of faith that Nebraska can win by a comfortable margin, and that's just not something we've seen them do, especially in Big Ten play, all that often. So I think I still like Nebraska. I think I took Northwestern and the points back when it was like 13.5 though. So I'm expecting a close game, because why wouldn't you? Question there from Odysseus 2002. What campus has the best boneless wings? I don't know. I think, as Tom said, go find a local place, ask somebody, hey, if I wanted to get boneless wings, what's the best place on campus to get them? And as you're asking that, go ahead and put a hand up to like block the punch that's going to come at you, so that you can defend yourself while trying to get good information on good eats around a campus.
When you ask that question, the person will say, sir, you seem to have lost your child, for whom you are obviously, for whose benefit you are obviously asking this question. I don't personally eat chicken nuggets, but if you can go to a playground and have your child ask one of the other children there where the best chicken nuggets are in town, and that's the best way to get the good answer there.
I'll say this though, we, with our previous food segment, went to a place in Bloomington, Indiana, and had very good bone-in wings, and Tony had a barbecue cheeseburger.
Well, I mean, it was on the menu. It's not like I'm ordering these things off of the menu. I'm looking at the menu and going, hey, I would like this. And so that's what I order. Here's a question from Bryce Minnick from over an hour ago. So thank you for being patient. Thank you for waiting on hold, as they say. Since Zach Harrison seems more of a strong side defensive end and was better against the run, is it JT Tuimoloau and Zach Harrison, the down defensive end, and Jack Sawyer, and who else as the stand-up jack defensive ends? Yeah, that's how I'm viewing it. That's what we've been seeing. And in terms of who else is doing this with Jack Sawyer right now, as of Monday, it was Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Palaie Naoteote. Of course, Naoteote is moonlighting between the jack and linebacker. I think we've seen him at Sam and Will maybe as well. So, and then Tyler Friday is, I'd see him more of a strong side, but I think you're going to see instances where there is no necessarily a jack per se, where you could have just two regular down defensive ends, and Jack Sawyer will also sometimes be down. And like the thing that was it Jim Knowles that I asked of this, or who I was asking people like the complementary nature of Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau, how one is a strong side defensive end and one is a weak side defensive end, and how well they mesh. And I think it was Jim Knowles said that they can both do everything. So it's not like one can only do this and one can do that. They can play wherever. So you may see different combinations, and you may not see a jack per se on every snap. I'm interested to see what happens on passing downs with the defensive ends and the rushman package, which I don't think we've talked about at all. Like, who are the top four rushers, and can any defensive tackles get in there? Or because I don't think we've even messed with that because we're too enamored with Jim Knowles' defense and the jack, and like we've forgotten about all of the nicknames that used to drive us and we used to thrive on, and we need to get back to it, Tom.
Well, and I don't know if they're going to have a quote-unquote rushman package. Like, it feels like they're obviously going to have guys who play in pass rush situations. Are they going to call that the rushman package? Are they going to have a shiny new name for it? I mean, they've changed a little bit the safety roles, and they've changed all the names for the safety positions. So, will that fall on Larry Johnson to have it still be the rushman package, or will it be something else? But it does feel like you have a lot of options there. I think, you hear them talk about Tyleik Williams and how quick Tyleik Williams is off the ball. I think if you're going to put one of those interior defensive linemen in there, maybe he's the guy who you have in there in that rushman package as your bigger interior guy to just, if you got that quick get off, you got that explosive kind of 10-yard burst, of all the interior guys, he might make the most sense to me. What'll be interesting is, you keep hearing real positive things about Caden Curry, and Caden Curry, maybe working himself into maybe a little bit of a bigger role. Could Caden Curry work himself into that package at some point this year? Because it feels like you're going to, you probably have JT Tuimoloau, you probably have Jack Sawyer, maybe it's Tyleik Williams. Is it Zach Harrison? Is it Caden Curry? Is it, there are a couple other names you could throw in there, but to me, of the interior guys, Tyleik Williams is maybe the most intriguing there as a potential guy for, whatever that rushman package is called this year.
Sorry, I was posting on the board about the Safe Flight Field thing, hoping to enrage the masses.
But please sign up so you can be enraged by Tony.
What message board am I talking about? You're asking. BuckeyeHuddle.com. Go check it out. We had a full launch this past week or so ago. The entire site is live. Go check out the membership platforms that suit your abilities best. I highly recommend it. I know the others do as well. And there are still people that don't know where gone from the old place or having trouble finding us. I had a DM today saying, "Hey, my husband wanted to know if you're still writing anywhere." And it's like, yes, I'm at Buckeye Huddle, and I've been here for a month now. And it's some people are, you get set in your ways, and you don't, you miss stuff, and you don't know where people go. But here we are, BuckeyeHuddle.com. Also at this YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Hit the bell, get notified when we go live. Comment here from Eric Biddle. You guys should wear Huddle merch instead of crap New York gear, Tom.
I am not wearing any New York gear at all, and we are efforting Huddle merch. As you may be aware, supply chain interruptions, yada yada yada, something. Eventually, yes. Hopefully soon, yes. Yes, that is in process. We're working on it. All of this has been, I don't want to say a fire drill, but it's been a little bit of a, roundabout process to get everything, all the I's dotted, T's crossed. I'm actually right now testing one of my setups for, it looks a little different if you're watching on YouTube, my setup. I'm actually testing what our game day setup is going to, sort of work like equipment wise. So we're sort of getting all that stuff figured out right now. And the merch is on that list. It's coming eventually. It might not be here for week 1, but we're working on it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I wanted
to jump in with just a little non-Ohio State, but college football breaking news. Florida A&M has not boarded its flight to North Carolina for their game against UNC tomorrow. There's an expectation that Florida A&M would be playing shorthanded, as a significant amount of players, more than 10, are facing eligibility issues. Expected decision later today. That's from ESPN's Pete Thamel. And then I'm reading from Allison Posey of ABC 27 in Tallahassee. She just had a tweet saying, just spoke with Florida A&M head coach Willie Simmons. There are 20 players that are ineligible, be it due to academics or transfer eligibility. He said only 7 offensive linemen that can travel. That's not enough to safely play a football game. So that kind of sounds like your answer there.
And if you're wondering how 20 guys being out could potentially get you to the point where you only have 7 healthy eligible offensive linemen, FCS teams, I think the scholarship limit for FCS teams is 63. So you're not playing with, 85 minus 20. You're playing with 63 minus 20, which gets you into the high 40s, that is not a whole heck of a lot of guys. And if you have just a few too many on the offensive line, that's a real problem. I am slightly relieved. I mean, that's bad news. I am slightly relieved. I was all ready for you to say COVID outbreak and be like, oh no, we're not still doing this, are we?
No,
but, okay. No. That's it. I mean, this is like, that's more of a fun, old timey, whimsical college football program problem. And I'm much more prepared to deal with that emotionally right now than, somehow we're having another COVID season. Like, no, let's not do that again, please.
This does free us up. I'm looking at the schedule. That game was set for 8:15. This frees us up to just continue watching the Charlotte at Florida Atlantic game that starts at 7 to then get us to the Vanderbilt at Hawaii game at 10:30. It would have been nice to watch North Carolina, see what Drake May looks like at quarterback there for the Tar Heels. He's the next big thing. Now he starts out 1-0 as a starter. So good job for him, and that's too bad. But yes, I was ineligibility fun. That's fun stuff. That's good stuff. We can handle that. And yeah, it's the other question is, how do you let that happen? And
how do you get to Friday at 2:29 p.m. before you're announcing that? That's like this is probably not news that just happened today. Like, you probably have, I mean, I can't imagine there's that many UNC fans like flying in from out of state to watch, but you've got parents coming in to watch. I mean, you've got parents coming in to watch and that kind of stuff. And that's a bummer. That's, you still get to go see your kid and whatever, and that's fine. And maybe they just do a scrimmage tomorrow inside the stadium or whatever instead. But yeah, that's you probably could have figured that out, 4 days ago and saved a whole bunch of people hotel rooms and airplane trips and all that.
That's an entire letdown. The academic department, and granted, all of the funding that they have is much less than anybody else has, but it's still a university. It's just, and I don't know what portion is academic versus transfer eligibility, but the administration really has let the players down, the team down, and me down. Most importantly, I would say, but so yeah, that's a shame. But it's week 0. It's not like there are other great games, but there are games that we can latch onto. I mean, Nevada at New Mexico State on 10 p.m. ESPN2. We've been talking about this game for 6 months now.
That might be like low key. Like last year, the UMass-UConn game got a lot of attention as, boy, these are the 2 worst teams in the history of college football. And look at this, they're playing each other. Matt Brown, Granville native Matt Brown from the Extra Points newsletter, actually went out to UMass to watch that game because it was such a spectacle of terrible football. New Mexico State and Nevada this year might like low key be about in that neighborhood because Nevada, their coach Jay Norvell left for Colorado State because Nevada just basically wasn't investing in the football program, took a bunch of players and a bunch of assistant coaches with him. And they're returning. I saw them on one of those, returning production kind of lists. And it was a number that was like that. Is there like another decimal there? Like, did they miss a number? It was like 20% of the returning production from last year or something like that is back, which is the lowest number I can ever remember seeing. And New Mexico State is consistently one of the worst teams in all of FBS and also has a first-year head coach this year. Like that might be, I am all for like terrible, like real sickos, staring in the window. Yes. That whole meme. Like I am all about that kind of college football. Nevada and New Mexico State is going to be some real sicko stuff on Saturday.
2 starters returning on the Nevada offense, 4 starters returning on the defense for first-year head coach Ken Wilson.
Is that a lot? It doesn't sound like a lot.
No, Tom, it is not a lot. But
you're going to need that week 0 drink of choice to watch that one. I'm just telling you, with Odysseus 2002's question, I have to decide if I want to do a chat on the board, if I'm going to get on here between games or whatever. If I decide to have a couple of drinks, I don't know. The wise decision would be water, but I've never been. If people say Kevin's wise, generally the next word that comes out of their mouth is ass. So, all right, stop. Probably maybe 2 fingers of bourbon
at a time. What else we have here in the chat here? Tom, go ahead.
So Jim Croniger wants to know what's going on with the kicker transfer from USC. That is Parker Lewis. He announced he was transferring to Ohio State this spring from USC. He is currently stuck in NCAA transfer purgatory. They are waiting. If you remember, the same kind of situation happened with Paula Ie Naoteote last year. The linebacker transfer, also from USC. He got in, and I can't remember at what point they actually finally approved him. I feel like that might have even been after the first game last year. Like it was very late, if not already into the season, before he officially got approved. It sounds like, from everything I've heard, the expectation is that he will ultimately be approved. But right now, he is still kind of in purgatory waiting. And Parker Fleming this week was asked about that. And he just said, like, yeah, we're just waiting to hear. And Parker Lewis is practicing with the team. We saw him coming off the practice field earlier this week. Parker Fleming confirmed that Parker Lewis is practicing. And he said, it's like, so how do you balance that? How do you deal with the uncertainty around that with, you probably have a plan with Parker Lewis being there. What happens if you find out and let it before, like, nope, still not approved yet. And he said, you just got to have contingency plans. They have, plan A for if Parker Lewis is approved, and then this guy will handle this, and this guy will handle this. And if Parker Lewis isn't approved, well, then here's plan B, and we'll do that. So it is, still waiting. Another one of these wonderful NCAA situations where it's like, I'm sorry, what is the hang up here? Like 500,000 players have transferred this season. Parker Lewis would also like to transfer this season. What could possibly be hanging this up? Like the Ohio State having another kicker on their roster, is that really the hill we're going to die on, NCAA? Like, but the answer is right now, maybe it is.
Maybe they put too much cream cheese on their kicker.
Nope, that's a deep cut, and I'm not going to explain that joke. It's fine. It doesn't. Nope. Great moments in NCAA rules enforcement. The great cream cheese bagel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we already talked about this one, Kevin, while you were off eating your lunch, talking about Tyler Buchner. As you've thrown up that question, people forget that Notre Dame. As I was reading it, then you removed the question.
No, you sat there and just rubbed my nose in it for like the 1 minute I ran downstairs to go get my cold Wendy's, sort of like leaving a pizza down at in the lobby of a hotel in Bloomington, Indiana for 90 minutes because they never called us.
No, they texted Tom, by the way.
Wow.
They texted me hours, like it was, yes, this was during one of our, was it the Friday or was it post game last year? It might have been post game after the Indiana game when I had been standing in the rain for 4 hours on a day that it wasn't supposed to rain. And the pizza place was supposed to, the website said like, it'll be here in 60 to 75 minutes. So we're like, all right, good. We'll knock out an hour show and then the pizza will be here. And then like 20 minutes later, while we were just starting the show, apparently the guy texted me, he was like, all right, I'm down in the lobby. I'm just going to leave it here. And we just went here. We were providing you content here on YouTube and just trying to give the people what they want, Tony and Kevin. And, is it on me that the pizza place was remarkably efficient for once and defied all expectations? Apparently, I don't know. I'm just trying to give the people what they want. If you guys don't agree with that, well, that's really on you.
It is a good problem to have that you force pizza places to get to you sooner than they promised. So good job. I guess we shouldn't complain, but that has never stopped us before. Eric Biddle, I saw, okay, transfer portal has, I'll get to the Sue's here in 1 sec, but I just want to counter what Eric Biddle is saying. Transfer portal has ruined college football along with paying players. If it has, with all due respect, if it has ruined college football, you wouldn't be watching it. You wouldn't be talking about it. If something is ruined for me, like, here's what happens. If something is ruined for me, I'm done with it. I finally got a Wordle wrong like 3 weeks ago. Never went back. Haven't been back since. Don't care about it. Don't want to have anything to do with it. I'd gone over, been correct over 100 times in a row and never gotten it wrong. Finally got it wrong. I'm done. I went as long as I could. Wordle had been ruined for me. I stuck through them with the merge to New York Times. But once I was done and I didn't go back. So I understand people may not like it, but let the product on the field determine, I think, whether or not college football is still for you. And you might find that, it still is for you.
It's very easy to look at something and be like, I'm not going to do that anymore. And then what I'll actually tell is the first Saturday of the season, maybe not even this week when there's, not tremendous games on. Again, I'll be watching, but it's easy to not turn it on. Next Saturday, especially next Saturday night, 7:30. I have a feeling when the opening blimp shot of the horseshoe pops up, you will probably be watching, and that's fine. Like, as well, you should. It's a great game. It's going to be very exciting, and it will be just as exciting as it was if the players were not able to accept NIL deals.
Yeah. Comment from Sue here. One of my best friends is a huge Notre Dame fan. We agreed today that regardless of the outcome of this game, we will never speak of it again, or we can't be friends. I think Sue can live up to that. Not knowing her friend, but knowing her friend is a Notre Dame fan, I really, really highly doubt that her friend will be able to hold up to that end of the bargain should Notre Dame win. I'm just going to warn you now, Sue. I know you may know your friend better than I. I know Notre Dame fans better than you, and you will hear about it. So just prepare yourself. In fact, maybe stop being friends now.
Yeah, I mean, Of all the times in the last 30 years that Notre Dame's won a big game, how many times can you remember the Notre Dame fans not talking about it? What? You can't divide by 0? What? Oh, well. Well, back when I was in 7th grade, I knew a Notre Dame fan, and man, he didn't shut up about whatever, beating Texas A&M in the Cotton Bowl or something. 1993, long time ago. Anyway, back to you.
Did I hear a Niner in there?
Shut up, Richard.
I hear you getting fatter.
All right. What's next?
Let me get back into the questions here. We kind of have gotten through a lot.
Here's one
of them.
from Gary K. From over an hour ago. My other concern is Paris Johnson moving outside and how long it takes him to get comfortable playing outside. He is playing the most important position on the line, which is left tackle. And I think that this is a concern that we've all had, I think, as well. But he was there as a true freshman, moved away and did something unfamiliar for a year, but now he's gone back to doing what is familiar. And it's something he's been doing forever. It's something that what he's doing now has been something that he's been building up towards. Like he was destined to be Ohio State's future left tackle years and years ago. So he's finally where he is. He's finally home. And I think when you finally get to your home, you make it a home. Basically, you create comfort in it and you find comfort in it and you explore the space of it and you study it because you want to be the absolute best at it. This could be his contract year. So yeah, I understand the concern. He has all of the tools, and as important as that, he has the mental makeup for it as well. Like he is doing everything off field, on the field that he can when he's not devoting time to his charitable foundation and taking time away from football when he should be, focused on the field. But he's a well-rounded person, and I don't think this is going to be too much for him.
Well, when we watched practice, what part of the offensive line was a concern to you?
The interior.
When you've talked to anyone who's been around the program this month, when the coaches have talked about, potential concerns, what part of the offensive line have they talked about as a concern?
The interior.
It feels to me like they're, you, them, me, Kevin, coaches, they're able to acknowledge when there's a concern on the offensive line. You really just haven't heard people talking about DeJuan Jones or Paris Johnson, either of the tackles, as really a concern right now. So to me, that means there is probably not a whole lot of a concern right now. I think if you're going to worry about something in the offensive line, maybe it's the interior. And that's just, we'll see how it looks against Notre Dame because, again, it could be there's enough optimism around the interior of the Ohio State defensive line that it might just be, hey, they're going against really good defensive linemen in practice. And that's about 75% of the concern with the interior of the offensive line. So we'll see what it looks like against Notre Dame. But yeah, I don't think Paris Johnson's kind of anywhere near the top of my list of concerns right now.
Yeah, the concern on the interior may just be relative concern compared to the outside. Well, you're just looking for problems, like, and you can find them easier on the inside. JJ says here, Penn State is a day game this season, and possibly Maryland could be overlooked for Michigan. I'm interested to see that Michigan-Maryland game, the passing game of Maryland against a Michigan secondary that no longer has Dax Hill, no longer has the pass rush of Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo. And no matter how good their replacements are, they're not going to be that as good as those two. I don't think you're going to see 2 first-rounders there. And so if they can give him some time, Talia Tagovailoa, to throw the ball, it could be interesting. Although we thought all of those same things last year against Iowa, and was that last year against Iowa, where Iowa just lit them up and picked him off all kinds of times and just ran him into the ground. And that's the problem with the Marylands. You never know when you're going to get the good part of the team or the bad part of the team. You never know who's going to show up, and that's always the difficulty with that one.
It feels like that Maryland is always playing a Friday night game on BTN when we're on the road. I think last year that Iowa game was the night before the Rutgers game. There was a year when we were at Nebraska, and it was Penn State, Maryland. And Maryland is. I think Maryland's going to be better this year, and I think Maryland's going to put up some points this year. I'm not sold on the Maryland defense this year, but I think they're going to be interesting enough where they'll put up enough points to keep games interesting into the second half against even pretty decent teams. But you just, ultimately you run into a talent issue and a coaching issue there. And there's not enough talent to really hang with the big boys. And so when you get to play a good Penn State team, or you get to play a really good disciplined Iowa team, it kind of goes to crap pretty quickly for them. So I think that they might be interesting enough to be able to put up 24, 28 points against anybody on their schedule. So if they lose to Michigan, maybe they lose to Michigan 42-28, and it's like, oh, that was an interesting game for 3.5 quarters. So you might have something like that maybe this year.
That Michigan-Maryland game comes 1 week before Michigan goes to Iowa. So could that be a little trip-up game there, trap game for them? Maybe.
Well, we know that Iowa always seems to knock somebody off at Kinnick every year. It seems like, especially if that ends up being under the lights or something. That I remember sitting actually in Silver Spring, Maryland, watching. I think it was Iowa tripping up Michigan at Kinnick at that point, sitting at a bar. I think it would have been like the Ohio State game was probably at noon. It was a night game. Finally walked in probably in the third quarter, and there were a lot of people that were going nuts. Granted, they were Ohio State types that were, staying in the same area who are happy to see the arch rival drop. But yeah, I agree.
I think I watched Iowa beat Michigan in 2010 when I was at the Wisconsin game. Like as the getting ready for the night game in Wisconsin, it must have been a 3:30 or probably a noon game. Now that I'm thinking about how long we were tailgating, maybe a noon game in Iowa that Michigan lost. Yeah, there can be some good games this year where Iowa gets somebody. And the good news for the Ohio State Buckeyes is they're not going to Kinnick, so you don't have to worry about that. But you can get a measure of revenge at home in Ohio Stadium. I almost said the word, Tom. So
I thought you were going to say Saturday, October 22nd, because that's what it is. Kickoff TBA. No further information needed or provided.
So Florida A&M is going to be playing North Carolina. They will be continuing the game because North Carolina, threatened to not pay them their $1.3 million. And so Florida A&M has already spent the money. So now they have to go play probably.
And there probably was a contract for a clause in the contract for breaking the contract for anything outside of, force majeure type reasons, and player eligibility, mass player ineligibility probably does not count as an act of God. So amateurism, hooray!
I just know when we saw Florida A&M come to Ohio Stadium, one of the main reasons they were scheduled was to have the Florida A&M band, come to Columbus. The band had been suspended for that game for whatever. But that game should have never been played. What was it, 77-0 or something like that? And
yeah, and not as close as the score indicated. Yeah. I think that was when Ohio State scored 34 points in a quarter, and it was 55-0 at halftime, and only ended up 76-0 because Ohio State basically didn't even put it in neutral. They put it in reverse in the second half, and therefore only scored 3 touchdowns. Yeah, that was one of the most unnecessary games in Ohio State football history.
Yeah, Ohio State was used to playing on Heisman level, and they decided, let's play a game on junior varsity level and see what happens. And it was not good. It was the most overmatched game I've ever seen. New Mexico State probably number 2, or maybe Bowling Green actually a few years back, number 2. Gary K, that is good to hear from you about the offensive line. I'm thinking if Donovan Jackson is as advertised, then we should be okay on the interior. Matt Jones was solid last year. I think the line obviously gets better. Donovan Jackson, the more he plays, the better he will get, just as Paris Johnson did last year as a sophomore starting on the offensive line. Got to get those reps. Got to get the speed of the game down, and the only way to do that is to face opposing defensive lines that are trying to trick you, trying to do everything they can, trying to attack you because you are a new starter. Matt Jones has moments of greatness, and sometimes I guess there's consistency issues where he wasn't as perfect as he needed to be at times. Greg Stodrawa, for whatever reason, just I don't think they ever really meshed. But I'm by the time October, November rolls around with these guys, like I think this is going to be one of the best offensive lines in the nation. And the concerns on the interior, I think, are going to be fine, because even though Donovan Jackson is still just a sophomore, he played last year. He was asked to do stuff that most offensive linemen aren't asked to do, and he was asked to do it as a true freshman, and he was able to do it, playing that third tackle off the line of scrimmage, being an extra blocker. He stepped up. Matt Jones has been around forever now. Fifth-year senior, has played all over on the interior and is looking to fourth-year junior, I think. Well, or he's got another year because I think of COVID, but I expect this to be his last year. And it won't shock me if he's a first or second team all Big Ten player, because that's the potential he has. I also think he knows that he has to get more consistent. I'm also interested to see how much better Justin Fry makes everybody.
Kevin, you want to take this one? Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that I'm just really interested to see what a traditional line setup looks like instead of 4 tackles and a center. I mean, I think that, having Matt Jones and having Donovan Jackson out there, I think that they're going to be able to do some things that they weren't necessarily able to do last year. I think that the run blocking was okay. I think that they're going to be able to do a little bit more with it here at this point. Like shortly before I got onto this show, I was doing a show for Oklahoma City, and we were talking about concerns for Ohio State, and interior offensive line never came to my mind. So, I mean, I don't know if that's something if that was an oversight on my part, or I just truly am not that concerned about the line. I think the line will hold up. I mean, if you said, all right, what is your concern about the offensive line? I think it's about identifying 7, 8, 9 on the line more than it is about specifically what we're going to see here. As I see a super chat just came in, I want to punch that up, but so I don't know if I see it at this point. Now, I might feel differently after 3 weeks if we see the same issues. I know that at some point we talked to Kevin Wilson about 3rd and short and running the ball at that point. He's like, oh, we're not quite there yet, but I think that in large amounts could be coach speak too. I mean, if they were completing, if they were knocking it in 100 out of 100 times, would Kevin Wilson tell us that? Absolutely not. I mean, because you don't have perfection in August, but we'll see.
Well, the concern, if you're knocking it in 100 times out of 100, is this defensive line is terrible. Like that, and that would be true. That's one of those things where, is it because of the offensive line? Is like, are you happy when one team wins or one side wins or loses? It's like, if you lose every time, that's not good news. And it's been very good reviews from the defensive line side, which I think is probably what you would prefer. The defensive line is going to set the tone in all facets in a game. And if your defensive line is setting a better tone than the opponent, and your offensive line is grown from working against them, I think I would rather have the defensive line winning more often than the offensive line winning in practice.
Yeah, and that is, it feels like every time we've talked to the team, people have talked about the defense winning, enough that everyone feels like it's really competitive. It's a very competitive situation. Given what we think the offense could be this year, if the defense is holding their own against the offense, that's probably a very good thing. Super chat from Philip Pulio. So glad you guys are back. Same. My wife and I are coming from Wisconsin. What is the best date night spot to take her for dinner in Columbus these days? And a fantastic follow-up from Roger Smith. See if you guys can find the subtext on this one. Depends on what your budget is. I have some recommendations on the mid to high end. The team will cover all the fun joints. Feels like he's implying that we only dine in places with $1 sign or $2 signs on Yelp. And I got to tell you, I don't think he's wrong.
No, and that's why I have no good answers for you. Just find a Chipotle with a good parking lot. That's the best thing I could tell you.
There are some fun spots down in the short north, and parking can be a little bit of a challenge down there. But there are a bunch of just kind of really fun, kind of smaller spots, small locally owned spots down there. Those are places worth looking at. If you want like a steak, Hyde Park is a good place. Jeff Ruby's a good place. If you just search Cameron Mitchell restaurants, Cameron Mitchell is a restaurateur in Columbus, and pretty much all of his stuff. He has stuff kind of all over the spectrum. Most of his stuff is pretty good. I in the single and double dollar sign end of the spectrum, I like Cap City Diner a lot. That's actually almost walking distance from the stadium, just on the other side of the river at Olentangy and like Fifth or King, something around there.
Okay, yeah.
Really, they have a fantastic meatloaf that I would recommend to anyone. And if you go on a Sunday morning, they have like cinnamon butter rolls that are really good as well. That's not a date night place necessarily, but that's a nice spot. If you were close to campus, it's kind of a nice little spot to go to.
I'll throw in a place over at the Levesque Tower. It's called The Keep. Went there during restaurant week about 6-8 months ago. It's really good. Nice, wide variance on its menu. Really good drink program there. It's a place that I would highly recommend. Once again, your downtown parking is a bit of a pain, but I would say that I put the URL for it in the chat.
I'll throw in not a date night place, but a good Mexican place up at Polaris, the Tula Taqueria. I actually had it yesterday. I have it a couple times a month. Tacos, street tacos, American tacos, great bowls, great burritos, and a breakfast burrito anytime you want. So all hours, as long as they're open. If they're not open, it's a no-go.
If you need recommendations out in Licking County, if you find yourself 30 miles east of Columbus, I can recommend lots of fantastic local spots, but don't dine in Columbus nearly as often as I used to.
So we are going to start winding down here. Put in a good 2 hours as we wanted to. What have we learned? We'll each throw one thing out there that we have learned about camp. I will start so that you guys can think about it. And as I talk now, I will think about what I'm going to say. I am going to say the receivers that are finally to the depth that we have been talking about for years in terms of, will they play six? Can they roll guys? And then can they finally rotate guys and get everybody involved? Last year, it was just Jackson Smith and Jigba, Chris Olave, and Garrett Wilson. They played 3 times the number of snaps as Marvin Harrison, who played the fourth number of snaps, fourth highest number of snaps. They were all over 600. He was at like 200 in the regular season. Having 6 or 7 guys, once Cameron Babb gets back, 7 guys that they're comfortable playing will allow Brian Hartline to do whatever he wants, wherever he needs. If there's a hot hand, you can ride it. You can move that hot hand around. You can force defenses to, do we need to trail this guy? Do we need to bracket this guy? You can attack different ways. So I think for me, it's good to see that they are finally there at that point. And I think that'll be fun to watch, this constant rotation of guys. Tom.
To me, it's linebackers. And I think we came into the fall thinking there was going to be a real battle for the starting linebacking positions and nothing was really certain. And it felt very apparent to me like a weekend, like, oh no, these are the 2 starting linebackers. These are 2 guys who have definitely separated themselves from the rest of the pack. And it feels like they feel pretty good about some of the guys behind them. So that to me tells me the linebacker play might be dramatically improved this year. Tommy Eichenberg, Steel Chambers seem like they are pretty locked in and have been for weeks now, as these are the guys who are going to be starting this fall. To me, that was something that entered fall camp as a little bit of a question. Number 1, who's going to be starting there? Number 2, how good are they going to be? I feel like the speed with which we got those answers, and the fact that this is Jim Knowles' kind of baby, the linebacker position, he knows exactly what he's looking for. He knows exactly what he wants, exactly what he needs out of that spot. For him to have those 2 spots seemingly locked down 3 weeks ago, that to me is maybe one of the best indications that linebacker could go from a weakness to really potentially a strength this fall.
I'll stay on the defensive side and I'll talk about the defensive line, and I'll go just as recently as was it yesterday when Holly Rowe put out her little video tweet saying, I'm just, here eating fruit on a stick outside of Ohio State practice, and wow, that defensive line, I'm really impressed. And then, she goes on to say, Ohio State could win it all. We got to see very limited amounts of practice, but we certainly get to talk to people who do see practice. We talk to the team. It's more than just what we see. But if this defensive line is 75% of what we're kind of hearing, it's going to be very different than what we saw last year. And, I'll even take that back to 2020, the COVID year. It's really difficult when you have back-to-back generational players, Bosa Young, to live up to the hype that, the defensive line is getting at that point. And, certainly last year they were just half a second slow, whether or not it was teams speeding up on Ohio State or it was just Ohio State wasn't winning those one-on-one battles. So if all of that's going to be there, that's going to sit there and certainly mean a lot for the linebackers that Tom talked about. It's going to mean a lot for the secondary. It's going to mean a lot for everything. So, I think one of the biggest things I learned is that a lot of people are buying on the defensive line. And I think at this point, you have to put me in that column as well.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to Tom's thing that maybe it's being mentioned here by Sage Ohio. I just hope maybe a little less rotation. There may be no rotation at linebacker this year, and that allows Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg to really pick up steam. For Kevin, we're talking they're going to play 10 guys on the defensive line. They're going to play 10 defensive ends and 10 defensive tackles as a rotation, because I don't see them not playing Javonte Jean-Baptiste or not playing Mike Hall, who are like the fifth guy in each one, perhaps. Like, those guys are going to play, and that will allow them to be fresh the entire game. That may be one way that they get that extra half second that they need, is just because they're fresher and as fast as they were at the start. So that's they may be able to pick up that just that little bit that they need from that rotation. So, and really, like, how do you focus on any one particular guy when people are moving around? And so even though there's a lot of guys who haven't really done as much as we've wanted them to do yet, haven't blown up statistically, and I don't know that anybody can with all the rotating, I do think that the defensive line is going to be interesting to watch. Anything else from anybody before we go, Tom? Anything?
I will just mention again, we've had people get into, message us or tweet at us that, hey, I didn't know Tony wrote. Like, I thought you guys just did the YouTube show. No, we're actually part of a website, BuckeyeHuddle.com. You can find Tony and Kevin writing there. You can find, we do all the podcasts are obviously posted there. We have a fantastic community. If you enjoy Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, lots of the folks you hear on that show, Mark Givler, Alex Gleitman covering recruiting, Ross Fulton, Justin Whitlatch, Devin Radcliffe on X's and O's, all those guys, all part of that community, all part of the team there. Tyler Shoemaker, who I had on the Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning show on Friday, talking about gambling and some advanced analytics stuff. He's just a member of the site. Like, we have a fantastic team, a really fantastic community. Lots of people. If you are the type of person who enjoys talking to people in the comment sections at YouTube about Ohio State football for 2 hours on a random Friday, I have great news. There's a website where you can do that 24/7 all year round. It is BuckeyeHuddle.com. Consider signing up to be a member there today. It's $12.99 a month, $124.99 for the year. If you're not sure, if you're like, I've never done the website, pay website thing, try it for a month. It's going to be a fantastic week there next week in the lead up to the Notre Dame game. And if the Notre Dame game goes as I think we're all maybe anticipating it should be a pretty fun and pretty eventful September there as well. And then you can decide if you want to stick around after that. But $12.99 doesn't really, you think about all the dumb crap you spent $12.99 on this week or this month. That's actually a pretty good investment. So BuckeyeHuddle.com.
Are you calling my gigantic Nerf dart gun dumb, Tom? Because I will bring it to the road trip, and you will see that it is awesome.
Cot of shame? No, cot of pain. Oh, man. Here we go.
Kevin, do you have anything to add? Perhaps would you care to plug your podcast or whatever else?
Yeah, I actually had planned on doing a live Big Me kickoff today, and this one came in and took the spot. So anybody that was looking for Big Me kickoff, this is it. But you can always find Big Me Kickoff on this channel, along with all of our other fine podcasts. Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning, the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I know Alex has launched one. I know I've been working with Mark on branding for another recruiting podcast. All of that stuff here on this channel. And if you're listening to us on the audio side of things, leave us a 5-star review. It'll really help everybody find all of our great programming, get us out there to more people, and all of that's very exciting.
Kevin, you saying if you're looking for Big Me Kickoff, this is it. Reminded me of the time I bought my mom a Christmas present, this big owl clock. And my brother was like, this is from both of us.
Kevin with the podcast Stolen Valor. Shameful.
Bull. I was going, you will even hear, if you would watch my show on Thursday.
That's all we've got time for today, everybody.
I was saying that I planned on doing a live Big Me Kickoff, but this was better.
I didn't want to have to say it.
That's what I'm here for, to say the stuff no one else wants to say. We all have our roles. That's it.
But we do actually want to thank everybody for joining us here on a Friday afternoon. Enjoy the rest of your day, and don't stay out too late, because you've got football, college football, tomorrow at noon. And everybody, I know we're looking forward to it, so we won't keep you here any longer. Thank you for joining us, and we'll talk to you all later.